Hello, everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. I know, once again, I'm late, but I am delivering on the next step in the player's guide. And given the grand total votes of 0, I have taken it upon myself to enact executive decision, and we are going to start covering the Bard character class for Pathfinder next. And I picked up the Bard because it's an interesting class. It's a good class, and it's got a lot of power and potential behind it. We are going to take a look at what I am dubbing the sharp-tongued leader build. This is a guide to the Pathfinder Bard, as I had already said, but since we know what class we want to do, we want to start picking things out that are going to help with the build that we have in mind. Is particularly for this build, we want a character that is going to be staying out of melee combat more often than not. Not that you can't build a bard for melee combat, especially given that it's official that it's been official for a long time now that everything from third edition for Dungeons and Dragons is compatible with Pathfinder. There are so many support books, some splat books, and materials out there with so many different advanced class or prestige class options that you can pick out for the bard that you can literally do so many different things. But, as Treant Monk said when he did his own build guide on this, there's just so much to cover that it'd be impossible to build a guide. I could get another couple of years worth of material out of just coming up with different bard builds if we included in all the third edition class options. But we're going to focus on just what we have within the scope of Pathfinder here. Specifically, we're going to be looking largely at the core abilities. We're not looking at archetypes. We are going to look at a wider variety of races, but we're going to be focusing mostly on vanilla bard and throwing in some interesting feat options from some of the other books and race options. So to that end, let's go ahead and actually just take a look at the different race options that we have. To start us off is my all-time favorite, just a archetypal classic, able to fit in anywhere into any class in most any setting, and that's the human. Humans get a +2 bonus to any one stat that you select. You get a bonus feat out of this selection as well. You also typically will get extra skill points from the skilled trait, but especially if your DM is going to allow it, you want to swap out the skilled trait for the silver tongue trait. This will give you a +2 bonus to your bluff skill and diplomacy, and when you use diplomacy to try to improve a target's attitude, instead of being limited to improving it by 2 steps, you're going to improve by 3, which will allow you to take some fairly hostile targets and improve them to at least a more neutral kind of state, which allows you a little bit more of an even ground for negotiating with them, potentially allowing you and your party to avoid a lot of different kinds of combat. So if you select human, you're going to be able to seize that lead more often in using these different skill checks to just help and aid the party. But I will say this does depend somewhat on your DM being willing to role play and allow these different skill checks to occur. In certain contexts, if you're fighting a golem, you're not going to be able to improve its attitude, but human bandits, yeah, you can negotiate with those guys. So, and then our next step is the Crystal Oriad. This is the next race option, and it is also a very good choice for this build that we have in mind. As it's going to give you a +2 bonus to your strength, +2 to charisma, and a -2 penalty to your wisdom, which, that's going to be our dump stat, as you'll see in a little bit. You also get Color Spray as a spell-like ability, 60 feet of dark vision, and you also get an acid resistance of 5. The only real drawback to this selection is that you get a 20-foot base speed like a dwarf, but, that's not too big a deal, especially considering we're not looking at charging into melee or getting into the thick of the fighting. We're wanting to hang back anyways, so that's not much of a deal breaker in this particular instance. But then our next selection is the Dampier. Dampier's that half vampire. You get a +2 bonus to your dexterity and your charisma, but you take that -2 penalty to constitution. Now, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take the Dayborn trait, and you'll lose your spell-like ability to detect undead, and you'll also lose your 60-foot dark vision and swap it out for low light vision instead. What this does is it gets rid of your light sensitivity that potentially leaves you stunned and then for one round, and then dazzled continuing after until the whatever bright light source is causing the effect goes away. And that's a problem because if you're wandering around in the daytime with the rest of your non-Dampier party or non-darkness dependent party, you're going to be struggling quite a bit. I mean, dazzled is not going to be the biggest detriment, especially at higher levels, but it is going to be a detriment, and you don't want to be dealing with that the entire time, particularly if your DM allows you to select this race. And if they do, we can pretty safely assume they'll allow you to swap out some traits. But to top it off, the Dampier also gets you a +2 bonus on saves versus disease and mind-affecting effects, which will help to round out the fact that will saves are going to be a little bit of our based off of our dump stat, and not super great to begin with either. You'll also get a +2 bonus to bluff and perception being the most commonly used skill in the game. That's huge. You're also going to take no penalties from having negative energy effects laid on you. So if you're collecting and accruing negative levels, those will have no effect until it hits the point that it will kill you, which is typically your character level. So if you're level 10 and you get up to 9 negative levels applied to you, that has no effect. If you hit 10, then yeah, you're going to die. To top it off, after 24 hours have passed, you don't need to make an additional save to try to get rid of those negative energy levels. They just automatically dissipate for you, making the Dampier a pretty solid choice. The only drawback, like I said before, is the -2 penalty to Constitution. But, given that, again, we're hanging back, we're not looking to get into the mix of the fighting, that's not bad. But it is a little bit of an issue since we are expecting to be fighting. We're adventurers. So, not a bad choice by any stretch, but not the most ideal choice. And then also, for another interesting choice, we have Drow. Drow get a +2 bonus to dexterity and charisma and take a -2 penalty to constitution, like the Dampier. And like the Dampier, they also have light sensitivity. So you're going to want to take Surface Infiltrator to gain low light. You'll lose your dark vision, but you'll also lose that light sensitivity, which is huge. And low light vision is not a bad replacement for dark vision. It's unfortunate to lose dark vision, but it's a decent trade. And another trait to pick up will be Voice in the Darkness. You'll lose your weapon familiarity for things like the hand crossbow, rapier, and rapier, short sword, and short bow. Those are all things you get. You're really only losing the hand crossbow because bards are not proficient in that. They're proficient in all those other options, though. But what you gain by losing this is you get a +2 bonus to your intimidate and stealth in dim light darkness. And while those bonuses aren't huge, it's definitely worthwhile to swap out that weapon familiarity for this because, well, intimidate you can use with your charisma, and also with stealth. Well, stealth is just a solid choice. You're in light armor, and you're going to have a good dexterity score with this particular build. So, all the way around, this makes the Drow a pretty solid choice. And then after that, we have the Asmar, which I may be mispronouncing, but we're going to roll with it anyway. The Asmar gets a +2 bonus to their wisdom and charisma. And the charisma one is definitely important because, well, it's your spellcasting stat. It's your primary spellcasting stat. It also affects a lot of your bardic performances and your performance skill, and a lot of the other face-related skills like diplomacy and bluff. So having that bonus is important, but the wisdom is our dump stat for this build, so it's not great all the way around, whereas the others are giving you bonuses to stats that we want to keep pumped up a bit. You're also going to get a +2 bonus to diplomacy and perception, both very important skills. And the Asmar also gets a nice acid, cold, and electricity resistance at a total of 5 each, which, 5 points of damage is not huge in the grand scheme of things, but anywhere that you can save yourself from taking damage is going to be important. You'll also get a dark vision of 60 feet. But to emphasize on what you don't want to pick, dwarves make very poor bards overall. Certainly, you can see where dwarves would have bards just from a standpoint of it makes sense, because dwarves, if you're going with your classic standard issue dwarf, they love drinking strong ales, good whiskeys, and that means there's going to be blah blah blah. There's going to be rough tavern songs. They're going to be singing all the crude things, all the awesome things, praising past glories. So it makes sense that Dwarven culture would have bards. Every culture would. Oh, yeah, just about every culture would, anyways. But from a mechanical standpoint, dwarves do not make great bards. They get a +2 bonus to Constitution and Wisdom, and a -2 penalty to Charisma, so they're crippling their spellcasting stat as a bard. And that's really all you need to know. They get a lot of other traits, but they're a benefit in melee combat, which is something we're wanting to avoid overall. We're going to stay out of combat as much as we can by range. But that doesn't mean we can't engage in a little bit of melee combat if we need to. Again, you're not bad at it, and with some of the different spells, you can certainly boost your abilities a little bit, but keeping yourself at range is definitely going to be the way to go. And just to show you what exactly I'm talking about and give you an idea of what this build's going to look like, for our stat array, we want to start off with our strength at a score of 14, dexterity at 16, constitution at 10, intelligence at 12, wisdom at 7, and charisma of 15. Now, if you're picking any of those races that are going to be giving you a bonus to your dexterity, this is going to open up a lot of our different feat options and selections that we're going to take down the line. Not only that, but if you have a rapier as your melee weapon, you can use your dexterity score for your attack. Now, you still rely on strength for your damage, but your strength score isn't bad, and coupled with the fact that the rapier has a pretty good critical threat range, you're going to be all right when it comes to melee. You're not going to be doing great, but you'll hold your own. You'll survive and potentially even put down some targets, especially if you've wounded them at range using your bow and the different combat feats for firing and putting more arrows in the air and dealing more damage. Constitution, we're going to keep at a 10, which you can see where having penalties to Constitution may not be super great, but again, as long as we're staying out of the way and directing the fight, using our bow to keep different creatures at bay, hitting flying attackers and the like, this isn't going to be too huge of an issue as long as you're not mixing it up in melee regularly. Our intelligence we want to keep at a 12, so that way we make sure we keep a good number of skill points coming in, and also as a way of making sure we have positive scores for our different knowledge skills. Wisdom is our dump stat. We're not going to be worrying about wisdom much. We're going to keep this at a nice low 7. And then charisma, we want a score of 15 here. Again, any of these other race selections we've had where we're boosting our charisma, that'll pump us up to a 17, and we'll have a dex of 18, meaning we're going to be pretty good at our ranged attacking, and we're going to have our spell casting as a solid option for us. Not only that, but again, getting into melee, having a dex of 18, using a rapier, we're going to have some pretty solid chances of hitting our opponents if they come into range. Also, given that dexterity is just a prime stat for the D20 system, this boosts our initiative, our armor class, and a number of other skills as well, and our reflex saves. So we're going to be doing pretty solidly. There's no bad way to screw up with decks. You are not going to hurt yourself at all, especially with this build, by pumping up your decks regularly. But this is where we're going to go ahead and leave it off for now. This is just the start. There's much more to come when it comes to the bard. But yeah, as I said, we're going to leave it off there for now. If you enjoyed today's video, go on down there and hit the like button for me. Let me know. And if you have more thoughts, ideas, critiques, or if you just want to tell me, no, I'm wrong, go down to the comments section and let me know down below. And if you did enjoy today's video, there are going to be a couple more popping up over here that you may also enjoy. Or if this hasn't been your first stop here at the Gamers Den, then hell, why not go ahead and go on down there and hit that subscribe button? Certainly we'd be happy to have you here. But with that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your Master of Lore and Storyteller Extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good night.